Are you a fan of the Halloween franchise? Have you ever wondered what could have been had certain scenes not been left on the cutting room floor? Well, you're in luck, because we've delved deep into all the major deleted and altered scenes of the Halloween series to bring you all the juicy details. From people's alternate and extended death sequences to the scrapped openings and endings and the complete deletion of entire characters from the films, there are plenty of scenes that could have dramatically altered the course of the series. So let's uncover all the hidden gems from the Halloween franchise's cutting room floor. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Halloween 1978, the hospital board review. The scene began with Dr. Loomis sitting with a couple of other psychiatrists who were to assess the risk that Michael Myers posed to himself and to society as a whole. One of the doctors was reading an excerpt from the judgment of Michael's lawsuit. The judge had ordered that Michael be taken to Smith's Grove Sanitarium under the care of a resident doctor who would report to the court about Michael's condition at least twice a month. Furthermore, once Michael turned 21, he was to be brought to the court so that he could be tried as an adult for the crimes he committed as a child of 6. However, Dr. Loomis advised strongly against keeping Michael at the Smith's Grove Sanitarium because the institution wasn't a maximum security institution, and Loomis knew the threat that Michael posed. He had spent almost 4 hours every day with Michael for a period of 6 months and knew that Michael had been faking his catatonic state and his comatose. Loomis wanted Michael to go to Litchfield's maximum security ward, but the other doctors kept refusing his claims of Michael being a threat. That was where Loomis suggested, for the first time, that Michael might be harboring evil in the form of an instinctive force. But all of Loomis's requests fell on deaf ears. Personally, I do not have a problem with this scene. Some say that the less we know about Michael and the more he is portrayed as the Shape as in the original, the better. However, this scene adds value to Michael's cunning and vicious nature. He is not just a murderer, he is scheming and deceiving. But I cannot say the same about the next deleted scene. Loomis thinks he's smart. This scene is supremely and stupidly superfluous. Set after the previous scene, here Loomis walked down a long corridor for exactly 30 seconds as the camera focused on him. He then entered the ward where a young Michael was sitting and staring at a distance through the window. While Michael stared outside, Loomis stared at him for about 53 seconds before saying, "You have fooled them, haven't you, Mike? But not me." It's too on the nose. I mean, the devil's eyes monologue of Loomis was enough to describe the evil that he was. Moreover, we do not want to see so much of Michael. The less we know, the better, so no complaints here. How did Michael break out of Smith's Grove? After his breakout from the sanitarium, Loomis arrived at the scene worried and afraid. We learn from one of the nurses that Loomis was talking to that Michael had facilitated the escape of other patients as well, and one of them was found as far as Morgantown Road. Inside Michael's ward, there was a mess. The room had been vandalized as if there had been a break-in. But that's not all. The sisters wanted to show something to Loomis. Well, before his escape, Michael had inscribed the word sister on his door. But I must admit, the acting of everyone in this scene, including that of Donald Pleasance, was highly objectionable and criminally insane. Nonetheless, that is not quite the only issue here. The sister reveal in Halloween 2, while a departure from the original film's premise, added an intriguing layer of complexity to the story. The revelation that Laurie Strode is Michael's long-lost sister not only provides a motive for his attacks, but it also raises questions about the nature of evil and the ties that bind us to our family. While some fans may argue that the sister angle detracts from the original film's impact, I believe that it offers a fresh perspective on a classic horror tale. The Three Girls and the Stalker. In this scene, Laurie Strode suspiciously answered her door, only to discover a panicky Linda claiming that someone was stalking her. Linda suspected it could be the same guy who was earlier after them in a station wagon. But she also speculated it could be Steve Todd. I guess he was supposed to be some guy who the girls found hot. The real reason why Linda had come to Laurie was to ask for one of Laurie's blouses when Laurie's phone rang and she found herself petrified once again. It was only after Linda insisted Laurie pick up the phone that she did, and it was Annie on the other side of the line. The three of them talked to each other, and strangely enough, this was only the second scene where the three girls can be seen having a conversation and displaying the warmth of their friendship, while the scene where they actually appear on screen was enough to show how close they were to each other. I wouldn't have minded watching an abridged version of this one here in the final movie. Halloween 2, 1981. Needle scene. When Laurie arrived at the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, she was seriously wounded and in severe pain. Dr. Mixter gave her an injection. Laurie fell unconscious as Jill, Mrs. Alvis, and Dr. Mixter leaned over her, and they began to undress her. Mrs. Alvis asked the boys, that were Bud and Jimmy, to leave the place. Alternate scene of Sheriff Brackett, Deputy Hunt, and Loomis. Following the tragic demise of Ben Tramer, wearing Michael's costume in a gruesome explosion caused by a police car, the scene shifted to an alternate take that captured the visceral reactions of both Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett. Here, Brackett constantly asked Loomis if the deceased was Michael, but all Loomis said was that he wasn't sure. Furthermore, Deputy Hunt arrived on the scene and told Brackett that the bodies of 3 young teens had been found, and that one of them was Annie, Brackett's daughter. The scene cuts as the car drove off in haste. Janet talks about Laurie's injuries. There was an extra scene in which Jimmy asked Janet about Laurie's injuries, and she told him that Laurie was okay, but she cracked a bone in her ankle and had an injured shoulder. When Jimmy asked if Laurie was awake, Janet said that she was, despite the double bullet sedative that Dr. Mixter had administered to her. Mr. Garrett blames drugs. An additional scene in which Jill conversed with Bud and Mr. Garrett has been included, during which they heard updates on the murders. In the scene, Mr. Garrett expressed his belief that drugs were the clear issue at hand. Strangely, this scene is absent from the TV cut of the 1981 Halloween 2 DVD, which is included in the Halloween box sets, and the reason for its omission is unknown. Shaky Dr. Mixter. In another extra scene, Dr. Mixter spoke to Mrs. Alvis about Laurie's procedures, but he was clearly very nervous and shaky. He tried to console himself about the fact that Laurie's scars would not be very prominent. Just about then, Jill came in and announced about the 3 dead people. Mrs. Alvis asked her to get Janet as it was time to call Laurie's parents. Mrs. Alvis is the boss. Mrs. Alvis attempted to reach Laurie's parents while reprimanding Janet for not having contacted them sooner. Meanwhile, Jimmy managed to break in to visit Laurie, and Mrs. Alvis granted him a brief 2-minute window, as she informed him that his time was limited. This exchange clarified why Mrs. Alvis later informed Jimmy that his time was up and they had to leave. Laurie learns about Myers. In an additional scene, Jimmy fulfilled his promise to bring Laurie a Coke. However, he revealed the unsettling truth that Michael Myers had been following her. Laurie was understandably taken aback by this revelation. She said that he was supposed to be locked away somewhere, but Jimmy brought her up to speed, telling her that he had escaped and committed the murders. Also, he told her how the story about Myers was all over the news and the radio. The reason why most part of the movie was dark. An additional scene was included in Halloween 2 featuring Jill on the phone, despite the fact that the phones were supposedly out of order. Meanwhile, Jimmy snuck past her to inform Laurie that Michael Myers was dead. However, instead of feeling relieved, Laurie became anxious and insisted on leaving. Mrs. Alvis, Jill and Janet all rushed in to help calm her down with sedatives. As they worked on Laurie, the hospital experienced a power outage, causing the emergency generator to kick in, which explained the dim lighting that persisted throughout the rest of the film. In fact, another scene depicted Janet discussing the unnerving situation with Karen. She described how the lights went out and how Laurie was screaming about Michael Myers coming to get her. Janet found the whole experience quite creepy and shared her concerns with Karen. Myers is wounded. The scene in which Loomis investigated the burnt remains of a man believed to be Michael Myers featured a different approach. The scene was also extended to include Loomis and Hunt walking outside the morgue to board an elevator. During that time, Loomis explained his theory that the injured Myers might attempt to return home to recover from his wounds. Karen's extended death sequence. The scene where Bud attempted to persuade Karen to have sex with him in the therapy room featured additional dialogue. However, the scene quickly transitioned to Karen entering the therapy room where she found Bud already naked in the therapy tub. The scene also included extra shots of the temperature gauge gradually rising, suggesting Michael Myers was responsible. There was an alternate take where Karen spoke to someone she assumed was Bud standing behind her, only to turn around and see that it was actually Michael Myers. The scene ended with a single shot of her being pushed into the scorching water. A minor change. There was an additional dialogue scene that took place between Jimmy and Jill as they waited for Dr. Mixter to respond to their call, discovering Laurie in shock. Meanwhile, in the theatrical version, Janet went to fetch Mixter only to find his body and meet her death. However, this sequence was removed and Jimmy eventually grew impatient, deciding to go look for Mrs. Alvis. The film also featured an added scene of Jimmy searching for Mrs. Alvis in the ladies' lounge, but finding it empty. Laurie acts Ori. In the revised version, Laurie's dream sequence was repositioned and featured a new voiceover of a child's voice begging, "Please, Michael, don't hurt me, I'm your sister." Later, when Michael entered Laurie's hospital room, he did not have a scalpel in his hand. There was an added scene of him quietly shutting the door as he departed. In another scene, Laurie crawled into an empty hospital room and reached for the phone, but she couldn't bring herself to speak, instead breaking down in tears and crying out, "Mama, he won't go away, he won't die." Jill's death sequence was toned down. The portrayal of Jill's death scene had been altered to be less graphic. The part where Michael stabbed her in the back with a scalpel had been omitted, and instead it appeared that he merely picked her up and dropped her. Furthermore, the addition of sound effects depicting Jill's groans during the fall implied that she might have survived the incident. Marshall's death sequence. The depiction of the Marshall's death in the TV version had been altered to be less disturbing. Michael was shown pulling the Marshall with him, seemingly stabbing him from behind, but the scene had been edited to be less gruesome. However, upon closer inspection, viewers can see a smoking hole and blood on Marshall's chest right before he falls to the floor. It suggested that Dr. Loomis accidentally shot the Marshall while aiming for Michael, causing his demise. This scene was omitted from the TV version due to its violent nature, resulting in a more toned down portrayal that appears to show the Marshall being stabbed. Mr. Sandman. In the climactic scene where Laurie was placed in the ambulance, a figure was seen lying beside her. As the figure sat up and the sheet fell away, it was revealed to be Jimmy, who had a bandage on his head. The moment created a brief jump scare, but it was soon revealed that Jimmy was alive and well. Laurie expressed her grief and said, "We made it." The two held hands as the song Mr. Sandman began to play while the ambulance drove out of the hospital's parking lot. Halloween 3. Season of the Witch, 1982. One UK version was heavily altered. The UK version of the film remained uncut during its theatrical release, and the DVD release in 2000 also featured the full uncut version. However, it's worth noting that the 1986 video release had some scenes removed, particularly the violent ones. For instance, the killing of Harry Grimbridge was heavily censored, with only a brief shot of the assassin wiping his gloves being shown. Similarly, the scene where Starker got decapitated had all the gore removed, and Marge Gutman's insect-related demise was toned down significantly. Even the drill murder of lab assistant Teddy was cut short, with no footage of her kicking legs shown. It's worth noting that a 2002 widescreen release from Sanctuary featured a re-edited print that was missing footage of the two face mutilations, but the 2000 MIA DVD remains the best option for viewers who want to see the film in its uncut form. Apart from this kind of country-specific alternate versions, there are not many deleted scenes that are even worth mentioning, so we'll just move on to the next installment. Halloween 4. The Return of Michael Myers, 1988. Alternate opening sequence showing how exactly Loomis survived. Originally, the opening scene was supposed to show how Dr. Loomis survived the fiery explosion at the end of the second film. Screenwriter Alan McElroy spilled the beans in the 2013 documentary Back to the Basics, Making of Halloween 4. But director Dwight Little ultimately decided to scrap the idea and opted for an eerie opening that showed up an ambulance waiting outside Michael's current sanitarium. Sure, it might create a plot hole with Loomis's survival, but it was the right move not to get bogged down with unnecessary exposition. The director's goal was to recapture the essence of John Carpenter's original Halloween, and in that goal, he succeeded. The absence of the Loomis explosion scene didn't hurt the sequel's flow, and in fact, it added to the spooky, ethereal vibe that the Halloween franchise captured so well. Kudos to Little for going back to basics and delivering a worthy follow-up to the first two films. Halloween 4 is a must-watch for fans of the series. Extended climax. The suspenseful finale of Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, left viewers with a gruesome sight. That was a bloodied and destroyed police station. Sheriff Meeker, Dr. Loomis, Rachel and Jamie found themselves in the aftermath of Michael's attack, leaving us to wonder how the events unfolded. Rumor has long circulated that a scene depicting Michael's assault on the station was shot, but ultimately left on the cutting room floor. The horror continuity's curiosity was piqued when Fangoria magazine published several stills from the rumored scene. Later, a promise of unseen footage from the film's Blu-ray release had fans eagerly anticipating the possibility of seeing the lost sequence. Alas, the excitement was short-lived when Anchor Bay announced that the canister of film containing the cut footage was, in fact, empty. Though disappointing, the absence of the police station attack does not diminish the impact of Halloween 4's thrilling climax. However, the possibility of seeing the scene one day still tantalizes us, akin to having discovered finally deleted scenes from the original Star Wars trilogy. In the end, the importance lies in the film itself, which made its way to Blu-ray and continues to captivate audiences with its iconic villain and intense scares. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, 1989. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers was one of the most decisive entries in the Halloween franchise, but one aspect that can't be denied in the film's intriguing opening scene. Originally, the scene would have showcased the mysterious Dr. Death character, a young occultist who revived Michael with black magic. However, producer Mustafa Akkad thought the scene was too fantastical and opted to reshoot it with an older hermit character instead. Despite the change, the opening scene still managed to do an excellent job of establishing the story and explaining Michael's mysterious year-long absence. Additionally, the introduction of the enigmatic Man in Black was a significant addition to the Halloween mythology. Sporting a cowboy getup and bearing a thorn rune tattoo similar to Michael's, the Man in Black was created during filming to tie together some loose narrative threads and give audiences a tantalizing hint of what was to come. While some fans were left scratching their heads at the Man in Black's ambiguous identity, it is hard to deny that the character added an extra layer of intrigue to an already compelling story. This was basically the only major scene that was shot and survived. Although some other vague pieces of footage survived, a significant portion of the film was left on the cutting room floor. By piecing together clues from behind-the-scenes content and conversations with those involved in production, we can gain an insight into the scenes that were shortened or removed entirely. Let's take a look at some of these, which pertain mostly to the violent scenes. Michael versus a SWAT team. In one of the lost scenes from Halloween 5, Michael Myers made his way to the Children's Hospital, where he confronted a SWAT team guarding the building. According to Don Shanks, who played Michael Myers in the film, the scene featured a gruesome neck-breaking kill followed by a head-stomping and a gun-stabbing. While the exact number of SWAT members killed by Michael is unknown, it is clear that the violence was too much for film censors, leading to the scene's deletion from the final cuts of the movie. However, some evidence of the scene remained, including two rare behind-the-scenes photos shared on Facebook by actor John Platten, who played one of the unfortunate SWAT members. The photos showed Platten with bloody makeup and a backwards costume to create the illusion of a 180-degree neck spin. In the other photo, his head was partially buried in the ground as makeup artists applied more fake blood and gore to complete the realistic effect. Despite its exclusion from the final cut, the Lost Children's Hospital scene is a reminder of the level of violence and brutality that Halloween 5 was willing to explore. Police Deputy Eddie's death sequence has a continuity error. In the notorious death scene of Police Deputy Eddie, there seemed to be a continuity error with glass shards piercing his face, despite the previous shots suggesting otherwise. However, the truth behind this discrepancy lay in the cutting room floor. Behind-the-scenes footage from Drew Cummings' 1998 documentary The Making of Halloween 5 revealed the original death scene, featuring Michael Myers reaching through the driver's side window of a police car to grab the deputy's head and smash it into the door. Greg Nicotero, the SFX lead, explained the use of a jump cut to create the illusion of glass shards impaling the deputy's face, followed by Michael repeatedly slamming his head into the car door. Sadly, this footage exists only in VHS quality and has yet to be officially released to the public. Why was Billy limping? A tantalizing mystery surrounded a brief shot in Halloween 5 in which young Billy was seen limping after a close call with the elusive Michael Myers behind the wheel. While it appeared that some sort of impact might have occurred, the exact nature of the unseen event remains unconfirmed, and none of the actors have shed any light on the matter. Tina's death sequence. An intriguing piece of information has emerged regarding Tina's untimely demise. As it turns out, an alternative shot was filmed, which might have been even bloodier than the one seen in the final cut. Thanks to the bonus feature Deleted Gore included in Scream Factory's October 2021 release, we are treated to a brief glimpse of this alternate shot, which shows the fatal stab from a slightly different angle. Unfortunately, the footage is marred by damage in the lower half of the frame, leaving the true extent of the bloodshed up for debate. Furthermore, it remains unclear if any frames were omitted before or after the shot in question. Nevertheless, for fans in the Halloween franchise, any scrap of previously unseen footage is a cause for celebration. Blood gushing out of poor little Jamie. In one of Halloween 5's most heart-stopping scenes, Michael Myers viciously stabbed into the laundry chute, seemingly with Jamie trapped inside. Later on, we saw Jamie emerge from the chute with a gruesome vertical wound on her leg that was not previously shown on screen. However, the recent release of Scream Factory's Deleted Gore bonus feature sheds new light on the scene, revealing approximately 1 second of little Jamie's leg as blood gushes out of it, and meanwhile Michael's knife pierces through both the laundry chute and her body. An alternate ending? Rumors abound of a shadowy alternate ending for Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, which allegedly depicted a bloody shootout at the police station where Myers was being held. According to Rob Draper, the film's director of photography, this scene was shot with a handheld camera, following the action down a long corridor as officers were gunned down in a hail of bullets. 2 still images published in Fangoria seem to confirm the existence of this footage, showing 2 officers in a state of distress and the beloved Sheriff Ben Meeker falling to his death after being shot in the chest. Despite the evidence, this alternate ending has never seen the light of day, leaving horror fans to wonder what might have been. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, 1995. The original ending. The original conclusion of Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers was an intense and haunting affair. In it, the ominous cult of Thorn decided to take Kara and Danny Strode hostage in order to use Danny as a tool for their nefarious purposes. Their sinister plan involved cursing the young boy with the same mark of Thorn that once plagued Michael Myers as a child, and then having him commit matricide as a twisted blood sacrifice. Kara was meanwhile bound and helpless on a sacrificial altar deep within the foreboding halls of Smith's Grove Sanitarium. It all came to a head when Tommy, the film's unlikely hero, came to the rescue. Armed with his mystical rune stones, he warded off Michael Myers and led Kara and Danny to safety. In a powerful final scene, Dr. Loomis confronted both Michael and Dr. Wynn, while Tommy and the Strodes made their escape. It was a finale that was both chilling and thought-provoking, and one that would have added a new layer of mystique to the Halloween franchise. Full screen versus widescreen. Did you know that in the full screen version of Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, there is a little detail that you may have missed? When Mrs. Blankenship holds up her knife, you can catch a glimpse of a thorn rune tattoo on her wrist. However, this subtle detail is unfortunately absent from any widescreen version of the film. It's these little nuances that truly make a film special and keep us coming back for more. The Producer's Cut. The Producer's Cut was a treasure trove of never-before-seen scenes. A different title and logo and an altered character arc, culminating in a vastly different ending. One of the most notable changes was the opening scene, which showed a flashback to 1989, where Jamie was kidnapped by the mysterious Man in Black just before the police station exploded. In this alternate version, Dr. Loomis provided the voiceover narration at the beginning of the movie, as opposed to Tommy Doyle in the theatrical release. Additionally, there were significant differences in the character development. For instance, Michael Myers did not kill Jamie Lloyd immediately. She remained in the hospital for half the film, only to be later shot by the Man in Black. And then there was the piece de resistance, the alternate ending. Instead of following the same trajectory as the theatrical release, the Producer's Cut took a sharp turn after the scene where Kara was captured by the cult members, leaving audiences on the edge of their seats with a completely unexpected conclusion. More from the Producer's Cut. No flashes. This version had a multitude of other deviations when compared to the theatrical release. Firstly, there were no flashes to previous or upcoming scenes throughout the movie, which was a significant divergence from the original cut. Dr. Loomis and Wynn were BFFs. It contained more conversations between Dr. Loomis and Wynn when the former visited the latter at his house. Dr. Loomis admitted to having undergone plastic surgery recently to remove some of the scarrings on his face and avoid frightening children. Wynn then revealed his plan to retire, and they toasted to age-old friendship. Interestingly, this scene was accompanied by more dialogue playing over the radio, and several different callers were present than what we got to see in the film's theatrical release. Kara's occult chant. Furthermore, the Producer's Cut included many extended and alternative scenes throughout. For example, Kara performed a certain chant for Danny when he had his nightmare. In those chants, she instructed the evil spirits to stay away and reminded them of certain rules. Additionally, there was an extra scene of Deborah and John observing Kara through the window as she departed for college, with Deborah expressing her thoughts on Kara's actions in the past. Go back to the loony bin. The scene where Loomis and his friend Wynn travelled to the farm was also elongated, since Jamie survived Michael's initial attack in this version. Consequently, she was transported to the hospital, and Loomis held himself accountable for everything as she was wheeled into an ambulance. The confrontation with the new sheriff was also more extended, with the sheriff advising Loomis and Wynn to go back to where they came from and stay away from his town. Deborah finds out the history of her house. There were numerous alternative angles and scenes in the Producer's Cut, including an elongated scene where Dawn informed Loomis and Wynn that Jamie Lloyd's corpse had been discovered. Also, Deborah's response to finding out whose home they were truly living in was accompanied by more dialogue and alternative angles, with Loomis providing additional information about Michael. Michael was forced to force himself. In one of the scenes, Michael was portrayed impregnating Jamie in a colourless flashback, with the notorious Man in Black forcing him to perform the nefarious deed. The finale also included Kara bound to an altar while the Thorn cult performed a ritual, during which she confronted Michael about the baby being his. Originally, this was the setup for Michael to kill the members of the Thorn cult. If you are a devotee of the Halloween franchise, the Producer's Cut is a must-see for its one-of-a-kind take on the original film. Halloween Age 20, 20 years later, 1998. FX Network premiere. While there was never really an official DVD release that could offer some additional content, such scenes could be found in the FX network premiere of Halloween H20, 20 years later. To begin with, the opening sequence had been expanded with additional shots of a goalpost and the interiors of Marion's house as Jimmy investigated it. The death scene of Marion had also undergone a significant overhaul. It was then shown from a faraway outside window point of view as she broke the window and was then seen dying. Of course, at the hands of Mr. Myers. Additionally, Sarah's death, on the other hand, was not shown at all, and her body was never found. One of the newly added scenes featured Will carving a pumpkin and talking about his family. It was particularly interesting to me because it added a certain depth to his character, which some may dub unidimensional and bland. He talked about his mother, who would invite a male friend to their house when Will's father was out of town. However, his father caught her red-handed one day and blamed Will for not stopping her because he was the eldest one in the house. Naturally, the event left him totally dysfunctional in the family area. He ended his dialogue by concluding that every family had a dark past, and who better than Laurie would understand that. Apart from that, Michael's stalking POV shot at the rest stop was another addition that intensified the suspense of the film. Changes around the climax. The climactic sequence of Halloween Resurrection had undergone some intriguing tweaks, all of which merit discussion. First and foremost, the final decapitation by Laurie Strode, which is now executed in a single deft swing of an axe, initially concluded with an abrupt cut to the credits, accompanied by an ominous Halloween melody. Another notable alteration occurred when Michael Myers was pinned against a tree by a van, a sequence that has been entirely excised from the final cut. While this creates a minor continuity glitch when the van eventually ignited, it's more than compensated for by the extended sequence where Laurie drove off into the night with Michael's lifeless body. In the chase sequence involving Michael, John and Molly, we were denied the gruesome sight of Michael plunging a blade into John's leg. Similarly, Will's murder had been edited to a leaner, meaner version that only showed Michael approach him from behind before cutting away to Laurie's horrified face. Last but not least, any instances of coarse language have either been muted or excised entirely, resulting in a slightly tamer but no less chilling viewing experience. Halloween Resurrection, 2002. When scenes become too goofy for a horror movie, Halloween Resurrection brought a unique twist to the franchise by introducing an online reality show competition that saw 3 contestants spending the night in Michael Myers' childhood home. However, what began as a fun and exciting adventure quickly turned into a nightmare when the contestants came face to face with the notorious killer himself. One memorable scene involved Sarah, fresh out of the shower, hearing strange noises in the house. As she brushed her hair, Michael suddenly appeared in the bathtub, but as it turns out, it was just her friend Rudy playing a prank on her. Unfortunately, this scene was ultimately cut from the final version of the film due to concerns that it undermined the movie's overall tone. Jen's demise was to be longer. Jen's encounter with Michael before her untimely demise was also originally longer, with a scene featuring her discovering Bill's body before running for her life. The tension built to a heart-stopping moment where Michael burst through the wall, sending Jen fleeing through the house in a desperate attempt to survive. Scenes from the previews missing in the film. There were some intriguing glimpses in the preview scenes that never made it to the final cut of Halloween Resurrection. One scene that didn't make the cut featured Bill staring at his reflection in the mirror and seeing Michael's ghostly image. The anticipation built as Bill turned around only to find an empty room. Another missing scene involved Jen pinned against the wall as Michael's arms burst through it and grabbed her. It's a shame this was cut, as it would have been the moment where Michael's brute force would have been on full display. We also missed out on a hair-raising scene where Sarah was combing her hair in the bathroom, unaware that Michael was lurking behind her in the bathtub. Finally, there's the shot of Nora on the front porch of Michael's house, yelling, "Get out of the house!" This scene was most likely a promotional teaser, but it certainly added to the hype surrounding the film's release. altered opening credit scene. The original cut of Halloween Resurrection presented a captivating opening credit scene showcasing footage from a home video of the Myers family in 1962. The clip featured Peter and Margaret Myers enjoying a sunny day with their children, including a young Michael and newborn Laurie. Notably, Michael could be seen attempting to avoid the camera's gaze, a behavior that would eventually foreshadow his future predilection for anonymity and concealment. The sequence was set to the melodic strains of a 50s tune called Darling Angel, which added an eerie sense of nostalgia and innocence to the proceedings. As the camera zoomed into Michael's dark, soulless eyes, the shot seemingly transitioned into the sanitarium hallway, providing a strikingly powerful juxtaposition of light and dark. The original ending was equally chilling, showing a brave woman CSI investigating the ruins of the Myers house. As she leaned down to examine a dark crevice, Michael suddenly jumped up, unleashing his unbridled fury upon the hapless victim. The woman's piercing screams served as a stark reminder of the terror that Michael Myers represented as the credits began to roll. Fight between Michael and Rudy. In the original script of Halloween Resurrection, the epic battle between Rudy and Michael has a much darker outcome. Michael grabbed Rudy by the head and mercilessly crushed it with the oven door. However, the producers decided to go a different route and opted for a longer fight scene instead. Halloween: The Homecoming. In Halloween: The Homecoming, a version of the 2002 film featured a Myers family home video at the beginning and the gruesome murder of a CSI woman at the end. This edition, however, lacked an opening credit sequence, with the title only appearing when Michael Myers made his escape from the sanitarium. Interestingly, the dialogue between Jim and Donna, where she flipped him the bird, was after the line, "Would that be 1 o'clock?" The inclusion of a rap track during the end credits and Janet Jackson's "All for You" in the scene where Nora made coffee added to the ambience of the film. It's speculated that this version was created as a rough cut or test screening, and the final edit was released with Danny Lux's completed score. 3 alternate endings. There were not one, not two, but 3 different ways this film could have ended. In the first one, Sarah found herself trapped in the burning tool shed, but Scott came to the rescue and pulled her out just in the nick of time. The second alternate ending is a bit more intense. In this version, Freddy was talking to what he thought was a dead Michael in a body bag, only to have Michael's eyes snap open and his hand reach out and grab Freddy's throat. But fear not, Sarah was quick on her feet and grabbed an axe from the fire truck to deliver the final blow to Michael's face. Last but equally gruesome, the third alternative ending involved a CSI agent searching for Michael's body after the fire. As she looked into a manhole, Michael suddenly appeared and grabbed her, leaving the audience wondering what fate had in store for our favorite masked killer. The red car. A discarded gem from the cutting room floor depicted Michael Myers cruising back to his notorious abode in his red car. The camera lingered on the iconic Myers house as he pulled up, activating the car alarm in the process. The scene didn't make the final cut, as the sequence featuring Michael's car theft was ultimately left out. Director Rosenthal was especially fond of this snippet, as it showcased Myers' chilling homecoming. A different opening sequence. The work print version of Rob Zombie's Halloween offers a unique opening credit sequence that intertwines with extended scenes of Michael's escape from school, Loomis's introduction, and the bully's walk through the woods. An additional footage presented a lengthier exchange between Loomis and Deborah, accompanied by a haunting voiceover, perfectly complemented by the iconic Halloween theme. The result was a more immersive and atmospheric start to the film, offering a deeper insight into the characters' motivations and relationships. Rabbit in Red. In a scene from Rob Zombie's Halloween, we caught a glimpse of the infamous Rabbit in Red lounge in broad daylight. As Lou Martini engaged in a heated debate with a drunken customer over donuts, the camera panned out to reveal the bustling street outside. Meanwhile, Deborah Myers was on stage performing when she received a phone call from Principal Chambers demanding her immediate presence in his office. In a quiet and subtle moment, we saw Michael sitting next to the principal, his presence adding an eerie and ominous feeling to the scene. The best 10 seconds of her life. In the original cut, a brief sex scene between Judith and Steve was included. An expanded version of the scene was filmed but was ultimately not used in the final version. In this extended version, Judith taunted Steve and called him a quick draw while they argued about making a sandwich. She went on to describe their encounter as the best 10 seconds of her life. This scene was ultimately cut for pacing reasons and to maintain the film's overall tone, but I wouldn't have had an issue watching the whole thing. Happy Halloween! As the night drew to a close, Deborah bid farewell to Lou Martini outside the Rabbit in Red. She expressed her regret over having to leave earlier due to an urgent matter at school regarding Michael. Lou nodded in understanding and even went on to say that he believed family always came first. Deborah wished him happy Halloween and he reciprocated the greetings in an awkward tone. The air was thick with anticipation as the clock struck midnight and the quiet town of Haddonfield prepared for the horrors that awaited them. Loomis's description of Michael's evolving or exacerbating states. As the story unfolds in Rob Zombie's Halloween, we are given a glimpse into the mind of young Michael Myers through a series of haunting home videos. These snippets of Michael wearing masks help us understand the purpose of his obsession with masks and, more disturbingly, the slow deterioration of his human side. The narration by the inimitable Malcolm McDowell, who portrays Dr. Loomis in the film, adds an eerie layer to the already chilling footage. It's no wonder that these scenes were included in the director's cut DVD, recorded over the phone after shooting had wrapped. In fact, in an alternate version of Michael's interview with Dr. Loomis, there is an added layer of depth to their conversation. The two discuss the nature of evil and the devil, with Michael describing the devil as hollow and empty. Loomis even donned one of Michael's chilling masks during the exchange. Michael revealed that he didn't feel the same emptiness as the devil, prompting Loomis to ask if he was feeling sad. This additional dialogue provides further insight into Michael's psyche and adds to the film's overall sense of foreboding. A grim fate for a murderous child. The deleted scene from Rob Zombie's Halloween featuring Deborah and young Michael at Smith's Grove was nothing short of grim and melancholic. As Michael pleaded to leave the institution, his mother consoled him with the bitter truth that it was not possible. In a heartbreaking moment, Michael responded with the devastating words, "Then I have nothing left to say." It's a chilling reminder of the brutal and harrowing reality that the child was facing, no matter how murderous his future actions might be. It's a haunting scene that adds another layer of depth to Michael's tragic character arc. A maximum security psycho. In this deleted scene, we see Michael being escorted to his parole hearing with a group of guards. The atmosphere was tense as the guards exchanged snarky comments with Michael along the way. Once in the hearing room, the officials were less than welcoming. Dr. Coplandson argued that Michael was a low-security risk, while Edwards bemoaned the absence of Dr. Loomis and questioned why such a dangerous criminal was being considered for parole. Ultimately, the request was denied by the stern and unyielding Morgan Walker. This scene highlighted the uphill battle Michael faced in his quest for freedom and the difficult decisions that must be made to ensure public safety. Alternate escape scenes. Interestingly, there were 2 alternate escape scenes filmed for Michael Myers in Rob Zombie's Halloween. The first one involved Michael taking the keys from the deceased Noel Kluggs and freeing all the patients from their cells. In a brutal display of strength, Michael dispatched 2 guards, one with a broken neck and the other through a window. With a cold look over his shoulder, Michael made his escape into the night. The second alternate escape sequence, which was used in the work print and the unrated DVD versions, took a more disturbing turn. In this version, Kluggs and Kendall Jacks unlocked the cell and proceeded to rape a female inmate in Michael's room. Furious, Michael took matters into his own hands and killed both of them. His rage was palpable as he brutally dispatched the 2 rapists and took the keys to make his escape. It was a dark and unsettling scene that added more terror to Michael's already chilling character. Cemetery scenes. In the original cemetery scene, we witnessed Michael's attempt to snatch a tombstone as the caretaker, played by Ezra Buzzington, interrupted him. Michael's reaction was to strangle the caretaker to death before making off with the tombstone. Dr. Loomis, on the other hand, was en route to Haddonfield and tried to contact Sheriff Brackett, but poor reception forced him to abandon his efforts as he spotted a sign for a gun store. Director Rob Zombie admitted to cutting the scene due to his dissatisfaction with Michael's appearance in broad daylight, which detracted from his menace. Meanwhile, an alternate cut of Loomis and Brackett's first meeting took place in the cemetery, with a caretaker gone AWOL and a missing tombstone in tow. Though it ran a bit too long, Loomis and Brackett read aloud from a book and discussed the movie's opening line: "The darkest souls are not those which choose to exist within the hell of the abyss, but those which choose to break free from the abyss and move silently among us." Brackett invited Loomis for a cappuccino the next day, but Loomis warned him, "Death has come to your little town, Sheriff." Upon learning that the grave belonged to Judith Myers, Loomis declared, "He's come home." Alternate ending. As the tension reached its peak in the film, Michael had captured Laurie and was on the brink of fulfilling his deadly plan. Dr. Loomis, desperate to save her, made a final plea to Michael, begging him to release Laurie from his grasp. Meanwhile, Sheriff Brackett and the police arrived on the scene, ready to take Michael down. Shots rang out and Michael fell to the ground. As Loomis rushed to Michael's side, the audio of their first interview echoed hauntingly in the background, a reminder of the long and tragic journey that had brought them all to this fateful moment. Halloween 2, 2009. The Coroners. In the opening of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, there was an amusingly macabre moment when two coroners were discussing the difficulties of their job. As they finished up with a particularly difficult corpse, one of them complained about his back pain. It turned out that the dead body was so heavy that it took 6 people to lift it onto the table. Alan Hooks, one of the coroners, lamented that he wrenched his back, prompting Gary Scott to advise him to lose some weight and take some pressure off his lower lumbar. It was a darkly comedic moment that set the tone for the rest of the film. Laurie's therapy. In an extended cut of a therapy session in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Laurie was seen discussing a Cherokee legend with her therapist Barbara. The conversation turned to the topic of 2 wolves that resided inside every human being, one representing fear and the other hope. Laurie found this idea bizarre, but Barbara insisted that the 2 wolves were constantly at war within us. The doctor ended the session by saying that the wolf that won was the one that you chose to feed, but Laurie failed to see the truth or the meaning behind the story. The poignant scene offered a unique insight into Laurie's inner struggles and the choices she must make in the face of her fears. But it also told us how naive she was as a person. Taste in music. In a lost scene from Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, we witnessed a conversation between Uncle Meat and Maya. Just before Laurie's shift at the coffee shop, Maya expressed her distaste for Tex Ritter's music, while Uncle Meat tried to convince her of his backwoods school vibes. The conversation took a turn as Uncle Meat asked Maya her birth year, to which she responded with 1990. But before the conversation could go any further, Laurie walked in and Uncle Meat greeted her with the taunt Princess of Punctuality. This scene added a touch of character development and humor to the film, and it's a shame it was left out on the cutting floor. A very important scene. In a touching scene, we saw young Michael and Deborah sharing a tender moment at Smith's Grove. Michael yearned to know why they couldn't live together as a family anymore, to which Deborah replied that their family was broken and it was not possible. But Michael was determined to fix it, to make it right. Deborah assured him, saying, "Of course you can, because you're my baby. You can fix anything." It is a touching moment between mother and son, but one that also hints at the dark and twisted path that Michael is destined to follow. Loomis at the conference. In a cut scene from Dr. Loomis's speech, he delved into Michael's troubled psyche, citing the young man's denial of his mother's suicide and the Freudian implications of his actions. Loomis noted that he had become a surrogate father figure for Michael, taking on the role of a parental figure in a long line of absent fathers. In another cut moment, Loomis was shocked to discover WWMD t-shirts being sold online, but his confusion over the acronym's meaning turned to disgust when he learned it stood for "What Would Michael Do?" Loomis expressed his dismay, decrying the warped mindset of those who idolized a notorious serial killer. Laurie's hallucination. In this scene, we found ourselves transported to Uncle Meat's record store, where he and his crew were discussing the merits of vinyl versus digital music. Meat passionately extolled the virtues of vinyl, calling it the soul of music and claiming that each record had its own unique personality. Mia, on the other hand, dismissed records as sounding terrible and boasted about her extensive digital music collection. As the debate raged on, Harley chimed in with a provocative statement about robots that left everyone a little uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Laurie took a break from the conversation to take out the trash, only to have a horrifying vision of Michael waiting for her outside. In fact, Michael was hanging a girl to death. But as quickly as the vision appeared, it vanished, and Laurie realized that it was just a figment of her imagination. Bigfoot or Michael. In the scene, we saw the police receiving a call from a woman claiming to have spotted Bigfoot in her backyard. Meanwhile, Michael was outside scavenging for food. Deputy Webb answered the call and relayed the information to Sheriff Brackett, but by the time they arrived on the scene, Michael had vanished into the night. As they drove away, Brackett lamented the strange calls they had been getting lately, including 4 about Michael Myers in the span of just 10 minutes. Webb chimed in, expressing his eagerness for this Halloween madness to come to an end. It seemed like those cops were in for a long, bizarre night. Loomis's view of the Myers family. In this haunting scene added during Loomis's TV appearance, we witnessed a touching moment between young Michael, his mother, and the departed Deborah's grave. As they visited her resting place, Michael expressed his yearning to be reunited with his family once more. Deborah assured him that it would happen once he set everything right and brought their lost child back home. At the Red Rabbit. In this scene, at the Red Rabbit, Big Lou was seen handling paperwork when his seductive stripper came onto him. She tried to entice him with her desire, but Lou was quick to remind her that nothing came cheap. As the seduction continued, Lou went onto a rant about the watering down of liquor. However, the encounter was cut short by Michael's arrival. In an alternate take on the Red Rabbit massacre, Michael barged in on the pair during their intimate moment. He engaged in a derogatory exchange with Lou and pulled out a gun, but the confrontation ended with Lou's face being smashed into a mirror. The stripper ran outside in the nude but was caught and killed by Michael. The next morning, a beer man arrived with a routine delivery to the Rabbit in Red, only to find everyone inside dead. The beer man called 911 and a lady responded. Michael, who was still there, killed the beer man by slitting his throat. It turned out that the 911 responder was Laurie, and as she answered the call for help, she heard the beer man's cry for help. But before she could intervene, Michael attacked her and slit her throat. Laurie then woke from the nightmare. Donut Dance. In this quirky scene, Deputy Webb strutted into the police station with a box of donuts, ready to start his day. He couldn't resist doing a little dance, catching the attention of a female officer who had a particular flavor in mind. But Webb reminded her that the chief got the first pick, and she would have to settle for whatever was left. As he showed off the donuts to Brackett, the phone rang, and Annie was on the other end. With his mind now focused on the search for Laurie, Webb handed the donuts off to another officer and reminded him that they were turkey-free, fat ass. But when he turned around, his beloved Boston cream was gone, snatched up by the sneaky officer. Brackett picked up the phone, ready for any updates on Laurie's whereabouts. They axed an entire character. In an interesting tidbit, a character named Darren, who was a friend of Annie's, was completely cut from the film. In one scene, Sheriff Brackett sent him over to keep Annie company at her house, just in case Laurie came back. They reminisced about their childhood and ate nachos, with Darren inviting Annie to a comic book convention, but she dismissed the idea as childish. Meanwhile, Brackett called to check in on Laurie's whereabouts and to ask Annie to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. Despite Annie's rudeness, Darren persisted in trying to convince her to come to the convention and offered to get her a spandex costume. He even pulled out an old elementary school photo, asking if he still looked the same. Honestly, the entire sequence was stupidly unnecessary. Alternate ending in the director's cut. The unrated director's cut of the film delivered a vastly different ending. Michael and Loomis smashed through the shack wall right in front of the police. As the crowd tried to apprehend Michael, he removed his mask, and Loomis solemnly told him that they were both going to hell. Without a moment's hesitation, Michael plunged his knife deep into Loomis's gut, causing Brackett and his team to open fire on him. Amidst the chaos, Laurie emerged from the shack, still tormented by visions of Deborah Myers. She picked up the knife and before Brackett could react, was accidentally shot by the trigger-happy deputies. As Nan Vernon's haunting rendition of Love Hurts set the scene, Laurie fell beside Michael and faded away. Her last glimpse was that of Deborah and the white horse beckoning her down a white hallway towards what we could only assume was an asylum. Slowly smiling, Laurie took a final breath as the screen faded to black. Halloween 2018, the long shooting camp scene. One particular deleted scene from the 2018 thriller Halloween would surely pique the curiosity of die-hard fans. The screen featured the iconic character Laurie Strode, played by the talented Jamie Lee Curtis, honing her shooting skills on some eerie mannequins before indulging in some strawberry milk. However, what followed was an intense moment where she cleaned her guns and picked up a 6-shooter. In a truly harrowing turn, she contemplated the possibility of ending her own life, even placing the weapon under her chin with the intent of pulling the trigger. It's easy to understand why the filmmakers may have opted to leave this scene on the cutting room floor, as it risked turning the audience against the beloved character. Nevertheless, this deleted footage adds value to Laurie's already complex persona as someone determined to safeguard herself and those she loves from a monster from the past. The Mask. In Halloween 2018, there is a deleted scene that provides insight into the dynamic between true crime podcasters Dana and Aaron, played by Ryan Reese and Jefferson Hall respectively. The scene itself was an interesting addition as it granted Michael Myers' iconic mask a few more moments in the spotlight, all the while delivering on the horror with a suitably creepy shower sequence. However, it must be said that the scene's chilling effect might come off as a bit of a red herring. Myers possibly killed a dog and hanged it. A recently surfaced scene from Halloween 2018 showcased an ominous discovery made by Andy Matichak's character, Allison, during a morning jog. In the scene, Allison stumbled upon a gruesome sight. A dog had been brutally murdered, seemingly by the hand of Michael Myers or one of his fellow escaped inmates. While unsettling, the exclusion of this scene hurt because it hinted at the disturbing presence that had infiltrated the once peaceful suburban neighborhood of Haddonfield. Friendly banters. One of the more intriguing deleted scenes from the film featured a glimpse into a key moment between the main cast of characters. Vicky had the plan to babysit the kids that night, and as was seen in the Carpenter's original, she planned to invite her boyfriend to the place after the kids slept. He offered to help her clean the tabletops, and she offered to pop his cherry, to which the poor boyfriend responded, "I'm allergic to cherries." But he came around soon. On the other hand, Allison went to speak to her boyfriend Cameron, who really liked her and didn't want his friend to act stupid and mess things up. Although the scene didn't make the final cut, it offered a valuable perspective on the character's motivations and thought processes, shedding light on the unexplained decisions seen later on in the film. I mean, this was a fun and relatable scene and would not have hurt the movie. But that's just one man's opinion. Cameron cheats. Another deleted scene revealed a surprising turn in the relationship between Cameron and Allison, played by Dylan Arnold and Andy Matichak, respectively. Following Cameron's drunken infidelity, the two reconciled in an unexpected twist, only to be abruptly interrupted by the arrival of law enforcement. The showrunners wanted to mend their relationship, but alas. Halloween Kills 2021. Allison meets Brackett. A recent deleted scene from the Halloween Kills offered a fascinating encounter between Allison Strode and Leigh Brackett, played by Andy Matichak and Charles Cyphers, respectively. Upon their arrival at the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, Allison shared the news that Michael Myers had been vanquished, having met his fiery demise in a locked basement. Brackett's response was both intriguing and darkly humorous, as he wistfully remarked, "I would have loved to have seen him burn." This deleted scene tells us that Brackett left his job as a cop after his daughter's death, because when Allison addresses himself as Sheriff Brackett, he says that no one had called him that in 40 years. Sandra and Phil's extended scene. One of the most intriguing deleted scenes from Halloween Kills involved Sandra and Phil, played by Jibril Nantambu and Paige Turco respectively. This scene offered a deeper exploration of their relationship, as well as a shocking revelation about the drone that Sandra was flying. POV shots from the drone's camera captured Phil and Michael Myers, played by Nick Castle, as he wrapped up his hand in bandages. When Myers realized he was being watched, he swatted the drone away, revealing the intricacies of his character and his propensity for violence. Although this scene was not included in the film's extended cut, it offered a fascinating glimpse into the creative process and the various narrative threats that were considered for inclusion. If you're honestly a fan, this deleted scene is a crazy addition, offering new insights into the iconic characters and their motivations. Alternate ending. The alternate ending of Halloween Kills was a game changer, offering a new perspective on the fate of the Strode women. After Myers brutally took out Karen, the scene didn't end there. Instead, we heard her phone ringing and it cut to Laurie answering on the other end, only to hear Myers breathing. The scene ended with Laurie holding the same bloody knife from the previous film, vowing to take down Michael once and for all. Halloween Ends 2022. Michael meets Corey. In an alternate introduction to Michael, we saw him lurking in the shadows as Corey woke up in the sewer. As Corey struggled to regain his bearings, Michael approached him with a deadly intent, and the tense struggle ensued. The haunting melody of Evil Eyes added to the eerie atmosphere as Corey managed to break free and escaped deeper into the cavern, only to come across the remains of Michael's past victims. This scene effectively set the tone for the film and showcased Michael's unwavering evil. But the subplot of Corey's sudden homicidal tendencies felt underdeveloped and could have left audiences bewildered. When your bogeyman disappeared, they needed a new one. A tantalizing glimpse into the tumultuous relationship between Laurie and Joan Cunningham, the mother of Corey, an abuse victim whom Corey helped rescue. In this deleted scene, tensions ran high as Joan unloaded her resentment towards Laurie for causing Corey's trauma. Just as the argument reached its peak, Corey unexpectedly entered the scene, adding to the already charged atmosphere. As Laurie exited, Joan's fragile emotional state became evident as she destroyed one of her prized possessions and hurled insults at Laurie. As the scene drew to a close, Corey watched Laurie from a nearby window, hinting at a possible future confrontation between the two. A gripping moment that added depth to the film's complex web of relationships. Corey wanted to be with Allison. In this deleted scene from Halloween Ends, we witnessed a moment of introspection for Corey as he washed his face and contemplated his recent misdeeds. His thoughts drifted to his encounter with Dr. Mathis, whom he stabbed and left to drown in the pool, and his passionate night with Allison at the radio station. As he looked at his reflection in the mirror, Corey whispered, "I want to be with you," while his mind was consumed by thoughts of Allison. Now that's the twisted psyche of a dangerous yet enigmatic character. A Small Lie. In an extended version of the scene just before the Junkyard Massacre, Ronald lied to Joan about his whereabouts. We saw him sitting in a comfortable chair, surrounded by shelves of DVDs and VHS tapes. Joan was on the phone, and Ronald quickly shushed her before telling her he was being kept there with tons of work. In reality, he was living in a cinephile's paradise, watching movies all day long. It was a brief moment, but it added to the character's charmingly pathetic nature and his love for cinema. Corey gets provoked. In a masterful nod to the Halloween franchise's iconic death scenes, we were treated to a breathtakingly gruesome demise for Margot. As Corey gazed down upon her writhing form, she defiantly uttered the iconic line, "Say something, you ugly son of a..." This provoked Corey into unleashing a merciless flurry of 3 crushing stomps to her visage, amplifying the visceral impact of the moment. The camera lingered unflinchingly on Margot's mangled countenance, allowing the audience to fully absorb the harrowing horror of her fate. A subtle callback. In a chilling nod to the Halloween franchise's penchant for callbacks, we were gifted an extended and gut-wrenching demise for poor Joan. As Corey entered his abode in full costume, we heard the distant sound of trick-or-treaters at the door, demanding sweets from the hapless homeowner. Joan, true to form, insisted that Corey attend to their pleas, unwittingly sealing her own grisly fate. As Corey approached, wickedly brandishing his knife, the trick-or-treaters outside began to recite the eerie chant that kicked off the original film. As Joan was savagely gutted, the trick-or-treaters outside became a mess because of their insatiable hunger for candy. The cacophonous chaos reached a crescendo as Joan's limp body was unceremoniously hurled into her collection of macabre rabbit figures. Marvelous verdict. So, to wrap it up, looking at the deleted scenes from the Halloween movies gives us a fresh perspective on how the franchise has evolved over the years. Each cut moment offers us a sneak peek into what could have been and how it might have affected the films we all know and love. Some folks might say these scenes were better off on the cutting room floor, but others might argue they could have made the movies even better. Either way, the Halloween series is still massively popular and has had a huge impact on the horror genre and the fans who adore it. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.